Is this other one on too?
Yeah, it's about to be.
Okay.
It's about to be. Okay, yeah, now everything's on, yeah.
Okay.
Let me check here. Okay, yeah, the Nogunri massacre. Here we go. Occurred July 26th through 29th, 1950, early in the Korean War, when an undetermined number of South Korean refugees were killed in a U.S. air attack and by small and heavy weapons fire of the American 7th Cavalry Regiment at a railroad bridge near the village of Nogunri, about 100 miles southeast of Seoul. In 2005, a South Korean government inquest certified the names of 163 dead or missing and 55 wounded, and added that many other victims' names were not reported. The Nogunri Peace Foundation estimated in 2011 that 250 to 300 were killed, mostly women and children.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Anybody that want to can look up Komatsu. Remember we was out there in
Springfield.
yeah, and there's I think Fred Komatsu,
Yeah.
Koematsu. And when you think about it, you think about Mr. Sulu. Remember Star Trek? Mr. Sulu? Well, just remind me to mention Mr. Sulu because he was a serious activist.
Right.
Everybody just remember him as a Japanese guy on Star Trek.
Right.
But Mr. Sulu, he might have passed away a little while ago. I got his real name. So he was a serious. He was on all of this stuff. Because see, remember he was the first Japanese. And this, imagine. This is only 20 years or 18 years, because 63, 64, I think the first Star Treks came out. Maybe 65?
I think it was 60, because I remember it the same year I was born. So it's either
66?
66.
It could have been 66. Okay, that's 20 years after World War II. All the things that had happened to the Japanese was fresh on the record and everything. Mr. Sulu grew up in that environment. So if he was playing on that program, he would have to have been born maybe around 1940 or something like that. If he's 25 years old or something, I don't know. Anyway, 66. That sounds like, so he was in one of those camps. And that's all, that was the whole discussion with the family and everybody. You know, all their property taken,
Right.
or they just closed down their property or snatched them up,
Right.
and white folks moved into their store and shop or their farm where they grew good stuff, you know, and so they grew up under the trauma. In World War I, the best fighters were black fighters. 3 Harlem Hell fighters, 369 to 371. In World War II, the best fighters, the most decorated fighters, was the Japanese fighters that they sent to Europe. They wasn't going to send the Japanese. They took them out of internment camps and say, you want to go fight for us? And they won more awards, more medals than they was bad. They was, might as well call them buffalo soldiers of, hey man, they took care of business. So that was a period. I want to now go into the period of which we're in right now, and I want to try to associate it with not only the time which we're living, but the surprises that happened that been going on. The last year or two, they've been really consolidating and speeding up. And the last 2 weeks, the icing was spread on the cake. That is the situation with immigrant Americans. I mean, with immigrants. And I'm going to start with, I could just start with it was dealing with Japanese. So, Japanese, you remember when we went out there to, way out in the country, not way out in the country, but when we went to that program and we was dealing with the law, immigration, and all that, and we didn't get a chance, because remember the people would come up and say, are you going to speak Imam Musa? And I said, no, don't look like it. Well, why don't you? I said, ain't nobody said nothing to me about speaking. But when the white lady, the lawyer, was there, remember that they had the Pakistani lady that was either voted for or going to vote for Donald Trump.
She was a Republican. She had been on the news and everything.
Yeah, and but they got her, she got top billing.
Yeah, that's right.
She done got top billing there.
Right.
And they done already kind of kicked in. You done already saw the results of where they coming from.
Right.
Anyway, the lawyer was explaining to them how they wanted to you know, what they were dealing with and what options they have and what have you. And remember, I reminded them. Now, I don't think none of them in there knew. I said to the lawyer, and everybody's listening, I said, isn't Komatsu still in effect in the United States? It's still on the legal books. Komatsu is a Japanese guy. He filed all his petitions, and during the war, he went and hid. He said, I'm not going to internment camp, so they found him, put him on trial. And then he challenged all that stuff. In the long run, they gave him reprieve and all that, but the law is still on the books. This is what I was trying to tell them. That they can still arrest you. They can still put you on trial and everything in America without all that fanfare that people are seeing in the public. They can put you away, right? And then the lawyer, remember what she said after about 5 minutes? She said, the brother is right, that Komatsu is still in effect. And they didn't look around and jump up and down and turn no flip. They just tried to keep going like, we don't care nothing about Komatsu or nobody. We're here in America. America loves us and we love them. If they don't love us, we're going to hug them and kiss them till they just drop, exhausted from compassion of us to them. So what we're going to talk about a little bit today is, remember a year or so ago, we talked about Asian unity. And we talked especially about Japan and China. And we talked about Japan and China because Japan and China had a certain relationship. And around that time, I used to buy all my movies. Remember I had all those movies down there? I bought them from, I can't remember his name, but he called himself Tony. You know, he was up in New York. He'd come down here with all the bootleg movies. I guess it went to where it wasn't worth it anymore. So he stopped selling them maybe almost a year ago. But anyway, I used to talk to him about China and Japan all the time. And I had said to him about 1937, this was a bad year. This is the Japanese. What was the city over there, Japanese? In China, 1937. Nanking, that's it. So I was saying to him, because the Japanese had kind of eased up on, we're sorry we did that. And I was talking to him, I said, you know, it's hard for the Japanese. It's a national problem that they have with apologizing. I said, you know about Harry Carey. I said, y'all got a little bit of it, but they got 100% Harry Carey. Before saying, I'm sorry, they killed it. They sit there and cut their own guts out. And sit right there with a nice, and just wait till they drop over. I say, you know that's their character. It's hard for them to say, I'm sorry. They don't even say I'm sorry themselves. They don't say, oh, you're a bad student, and and you're just gonna have to live with that. They say, I ain't living with that.
That's right.
Taking that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not gonna be a bad student, right? I just ain't. I'm not gonna do that. That's a part of it. That's a part of their culture. So, what I would talk to him about was maybe, you know, they didn't. That was so many decades ago, 80 years ago. I don't know. And I say, so why don't you? Now I'm thinking Tony is a Chinese agent here. I'm almost like certain. I mean, I'm sure, because the talks we would have, no common Chinese is just over here to sell videos, would be that in tune with what we're talking about. So he said, no, they won't apologize. And I said, well, can y'all work out some forgiveness? We're talking about kind of take whatever they can give of an apology, and then y'all head on down the street together. He said they won't apologize. You know, they're not gonna do it. I mean, we're talking like, and see, he's supposed to be just the guy over here bootlegging videos. Not like the Chinese are not gonna have people all in the black neighborhood, and they're gonna be right smack dab up on what you about. Everybody do that, right? And there's no better way. What better way than to have a guy at all the wash houses, laundromats, selling videos to Negroes? Okay. I mean, that's just the way I feel. He could have actually been a real Chinese, but he was too in tune with certain things. He was too sharp to be a video distributor. You know what I mean? I'm here to sell videos and make $5 or $10. That's it. Anyway, so we talk from time to time about that issue about Japan and China. I said, now, Japan, America is number one. Japan was number two. I said, you're now number three. You remember we had this type of a discussion? So I was saying to him, you have to be very careful about the U.S. using you against the Japanese, although the Japanese may deserve it. You know, because at certain times, in order to grow big, you got to overlook somebody, you know what I mean, that, man, that was wrong what you did, but we got to get boss man. And we can only get boss man together. I want you to also think about 1998. Tiny Tigers, Malaysia, all the countries over there. They was on the road. The world said, yeah, they on the road, the Tiny Tigers. Malaysia, Indonesia, and all of them. In other words, their economies is booming, and they're on the road. Then all of a sudden, the U.S. came out and bumped them, right? The same time, right after that, 98 to 2000, the Japanese. You remember in the 80s, the Japanese bought up everything, Sony, the Japanese moved on America, and all of a sudden, In 1 year, Europe and America turned everything upside down, and all the Japanese progress was not crushed, but they got a good whooping from the West. Okay. So this is where we're starting now. We're in a history flipping period. In America, in 1992, when they had the riots in LA, I don't know if anybody can pull up riots in LA, Korean store owners, you know, and that type of thing. Okay, if anybody can remember the TV, those Koreans, now forget about Koreatown. Koreatown is a whole city in LA. The signs are in Korean and a few in English, but that's where the Koreans migrated to. They have Koreatown out in Orange County. They have Vietnamese town. You know, they have areas where that whole crew, like Chinatown. You know, you go into Chinatown. Even here, it's a small Chinatown, but they have Chinese writing down there by the metro, and they used to have all them shops and everything down there. But anyway, the point I'm making is this, is that there's been a whirlwind of unity in the last month. But a whirlwind of unity, 2-3 weeks has been a whirlwind, all unexpected. Not all unexpected, but I'll start with it like what we would say to China is the same thing we say to China. It has to be prepared to coordinate the efforts of all the unity of Asia, Japan, China. Now think about Asian Americans. 2 weeks ago, Asian Americans, Black Lives Matter, you can let them niggas boil and stew if you want, right? We don't care. That's not the way it is today. Black lives matter, Asian lives matter, Chinese lives matter, everybody matter. And all of a sudden, the Negro that did something to some Chinese or Asian person in Oakland was probably hired by the government to do it. As of now, as of right now, there's, let's call it Asian American unity, Filipino unity, Pacific Islanders. Now remember, out here we don't have a lot of them, but in California and on the West Coast, they got all those people that moved from those areas. And the first place they hit is California. And that's why California is the most mixed state with all of these people in the United States, because that's where they got to first. First time I ever saw Hawaiian, we moved from Arkansas, was in Oakland. They still wore their hula-looking things, you know, in those days, their skirts. And to us as Negroes, and those was beautiful people. I mean, and they had their little skirt on, and we look at them little, not even none of our business, but they wore the hulas. They wore their stuff. And we didn't have nothing in common except the white man stole all their stuff, put the genitals of their last queen in a doggone bottle, and made them a minority in their own land, and they took everything they had. And now you have to go to school to learn Hawaiian, where they have a racial consciousness They're learning their own culture. But they're overtaken by Euros, right? They got tons of planes, well, you used to have boats too, going to Hawaii. And they used to have the hula people meet them, but you gotta think of something. For a while, they had to have hula schools to teach people
The tradition, yeah.
their own tradition. They're getting it back now. The story I'm telling you now has happened all over the world. The British were a part of it, the French were a part of it in Africa, and boss man over here. And now, I want you to think of the power of all the stuff that's happening right now. Right this minute. Last week, they had the Asian ladies that were killed down in Atlanta. And all of a sudden, what you have been hearing about, you were seeing on TV. All the Asian demonstrations. The president goes down there, right? And the vice president might have went down there too, because she's considered a semi-Asian. Well, she's Indian, yeah, well, half Indian, right? And she brings out whatever fits the vote. You got to remember there's one group of immigrants we're leaving out of this, and it's the Indian, because the Indian is super American, and anyway, it's a long story. But the Koreans, up to a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if anybody saw any of what those shops looked like in '92. They had lines of AR-15s to where they was prepared to see, maybe because of high crime neighborhood, no insurance or low insurance, right? So those Koreans, half of them was ex-soldiers, they had them boys ready. They was gonna cook the Negro. Yes, they was. You come in here, hey, we're gonna light you up. In fact, somewhere, you ain't gonna do no looting here. You can burn down the 5 and dime. But the store right here, and they had all the Koreans they was packed into Los Angeles from Koreatown. No defense of Koreatown, hardly, but all of them were in all their stores all over LA and all